Hello and welcome to our next lesson. Let's see, I am just getting set up here. Um, we have talked about China's one-child policy in this lesson. We have talked about human population. We had this due now the other day. We watched Hans Rosling's TED Talk, and we've had a CIA assignment, and those are all the great answers that you guys had. I think you're really starting to understand this. Now, this was your due now last Monday, and then we had Earth Day project and everything going on. And I wanted you to look at the map and brainstorm these factors that cause this trend that the whole overall world population has grown from 45 years of age to 68 years of age. That our country right now is at, I think you guys looked at CIA.gov World Book for the life expectancy of the United States. It was 80 years old, but just these numbers on this slide are the average world total. And I wanted to show you that the average world total has gone up. Let me hide this. So your answers went like this. So some of your class suggestions and why the world life expectancy average has gone up. Of course, you've said advancements in medicine, such as vaccines and antibiotics. Oh, no? Okay. Advancements in education, better hygiene, disease awareness, soap. I think only like one person really said soap. Like, soap is a technology that has saved so many lives because just washing with water doesn't get that bacteria off. I think I've definitely explained how soap works, how the molecule soap surrounds dirt and germs, and actually the water then whisks it away. With water, you're just pushing the germs and the dirt off your hands, but soap actually surrounds it and takes it away. Advancements in technology, communication. Here, come on. Yeah.
I thought it made the germs sneeze and they had to do this, and then the water washed it away.
Nope. I don't exactly understand what you're saying, but the soap surrounds the sneeze particles and makes it go down the drain. All right. So advancements in technology. So communication is easier. So with this coronavirus, if somebody in another country gets a cure, they can easily transfer the information. We also have healthier lifestyles. We know a little bit more about nutrition now. We understand that working out is important.
Corona.
All right. And changes in agriculture, pesticides and fertilizers have now become commercially available, and we understand selective breeding. Thank you, buddy. And changes in war. Somebody said that we don't go out to war anymore, but we fight with drones. So perhaps that has helped the human population not go down due to war. All right, continuing on here. So we're in lesson 8.2, predicting population growth. So how are we going to predict this? If you see here, we have, I think Hans Rosling talked about 1960. He remembers when he was in class and the teacher said the world population has hit 3 billion. I've talked about October 31st, 2000. What year was that? I have to look it up. I can't believe my brain is hurting so bad. But I remember the day we hit 7 billion and I was teaching in room 324. And then here, you guys know that we're in 7.8 billion. And then we have predictions of if we're going to get to 9 billion people, 10 billion people, 11 billion people. So what is the difference here? Why would we have 9 billion, some people predicting, all the way up to 11 billion, some people predicting? All right, so what did we learn from Hans Rosling in his TED Talk? I'm going to get this littler so we can see. Oh, maybe that's the littlest it can go. Push me over. We learned so much, didn't we? So his box by box, he used a physical way to explain how our population has grown and will grow. To slow down that population, invest in green technology. The green technology is going to have to become cheaper so that developing nations can become developed. And what it means by that is the United States and all the developed nations now we got to use coal, we got to use oil, we got to use all those dirty, non-renewable fuels to become developed nation status. Now we're going to tell the developing nations, hey, you can't use that because it's so dirty and it's not green technology. Well, is that fair that we got to this status because of those non-renewable resources, but now we tell people they can't use them to get to our status? But we need them to get to our status. We need them to get to developed nations. So there's a little paradox there. It's like do what I say, not what I do, kind of idea. To avoid extreme climate change, we need to absolutely slow population growth. Increasing child survival to 90% will lead to fewer children per woman. Oh, and you guys mentioned a few more things, and I appreciate that. You guys had great notes, but these were the main key topics. As we come through here now, yesterday I had you look at developing versus developed nations to understand what kind of criteria you had to be a developed nation. And this is the article that I posted, and I'll put it up there. The reason I cut and pasted it because it did have some of the answers, so I wanted to not give that to you right there. GDP, purchasing power parity, gross domestic product, GDP. It's the tally of all the goods and service produced in a country in 1 year, and it's always expressed in US dollars so that it's all on the same level playing field. So how much does that country make in all? We will look at the GDP PPP for different countries. But really, what is a better factor is the GDP per capita. That means per citizen. How much does how much does each citizen make? So this is how you get this equation here. You take the GDP, to get the GDP per capita, you take the GDP, PPP, the gross domestic product of the country, and you divide it by the population. So to get the GDP per capita, you would say a country has a GDP, the whole country makes $1 billion, but it has a population of $50 billion. The GDP per capita, it has a population of 50,000. My son's walking around, that's why I'm distracted. And when you do that, the GDP per capita is $20,000. So that's per person. The threshold for a developing country, a developed economics, is you're looking for $12,000 GDP per capita. Some economists even say now in this world, it would be more prudent to go with $25,000 to be in the developed nation status. Highly developed nations are going to be $40,000 or above. You're going to use the information on this slide in your CIA.gov assignment today to determine if it's a developed or a developing nation. We continue. Let's see here. So also, when you're looking at developing versus developed nations, you have to look at the infant mortality rate. No developed country has an infant mortality rate higher than 10 per 1,000 live births. And if you're looking at life expectancy, all developed countries have 70 years or greater. And if you're highly developed, you're going to have 80 or greater. So many of these developed countries have 80 years life expectancy for that country. So to review some social factors and population, first picture here, we have a developing nation. You can see the woman has a red bucket on her head to go get water. They don't have plumbing in their house. So in developing nations, higher fertility rate, infant mortality, and higher death rates. They have a lower life expectancy and a low per capita resource use, meaning they actually don't have a big impact on the land. So developing nations are better for the environment. The lower per capita resource use means that they don't use a lot of resources. But when you look into that developed nation, that picture, we have here a lot of resources being used to build that beautiful townhome. In developed nations, they have a lower fertility rate, a lower infant mortality, and lower death rate, higher life expectancy, and again, that high per capita resource use. We're not too good for the environments. So let's look at this. So population growth rate determines how the population size grows over time. I'm going to go to, we'll talk about this. So to maintain the regular growth rate, you have to get down closer to just 1%. So our growth rate has slowed down, and that was part of that first due now from 2.1% to about 1.2% since the 60s.
I could get the plane from the side.
All right, go get your airplane. Move that plant. We were playing paper airplanes yesterday. Population growth rates vary by region. Some nations have negative, and we'll look at that, and that's going to be shown. I have a picture right over here, this age structure diagram. So let's just look at this. Some nations have negative population growth rate. A structure like C will have a negative population growth rate. Down here, as you can see, this is age. The younger people, they have less than the older people. So that means that this generation, in like Hans Rosling's box by box, this generation nobody will be here to replace these people, less people. So this kind of age structure shows a negative population growth rate. Over here, these are positive population growth rates. They're demonstrated by these. This is going to be a very slow growth rate, and this is going to be a very fast growth rate. A lot of younger people. Turn my phone off. So age structure diagrams are really important, and they tell us a lot of stuff. The first, they show us the relative number of organisms in each group. So usually down here you would have actual numbers, 0, and then all the way up to a few 100,000. But this age structure diagram doesn't. What it also shows you is sex ratio. On the one side you have males, and on the one side you have females. So I'm trying to look at right here, you can see that there's more males being born in this area than females. You can see when we get to the United States, Australia, Canada, countries with slow growth, you can see the number of males in that really high age range are less than the females. So that's pretty much across the board. We have more older women than older men, except for in those rapid growth countries, the death rate looks equal throughout the two sexes. And then the number of individuals in each 5-year age range. So each one of these bars represents 5 years. So the first bar is 0 to 4 years of age. This is 5 to 9 years. And then this is 10 to 15. So that's why you see, 0 to 14. That's why you see this is this age range. And then you see another, 15 to 44, and then 45 to 85. You see the different age ranges here. These can be used to predict future population growth. And you can see that because here we have rapid growth, population growth, slow growth, zero growth, and negative growth. It's good to also note that Germany has negative population growth. Something like Italy has zero population growth, but they have a very old population. We have slowed our growth, and then those kind of developing countries, Kenya, Nigeria, Saudi Arabia, have a rapid growth.
Mom, can you FaceTime Zizi?
Not right this second. I'm kind of in the middle of something.
No, but I want to.
Okay, I'm back. I don't know how long. If I paused for a very long time because I have to feed my children, and it's hard to. It's hard. It's hard to make a good video, a good straight run video. I'm glad I figured out how to use the pause button. All right, so we were here, age structure diagram. They tell you a lot of information. So we're going to be looking at this in a minute. I just want to show you one more thing that we can find on the CIA.gov. And I know that tomorrow you're all going to be wearing your hair like this. I love it. Total fertility rate. So this is a very important factor in slowing population growth. Average number of children a female has during her lifetime. So a number of babies per woman. You're going to hear Hans Rosling saying that a lot. Number of babies per woman. To have zero population growth, a woman should have 2 to replace the parents only. That would be that zero population growth. You're only replacing yourself. One baby per woman would reduce population growth, making it negative. That's what China was trying to do with that one child policy. And 3 to 4 will increase the population. 4 will increase the population double. So let's go to the CIA World Factbook right now. Okay. Oop, I don't want to show you there. Okay, so this is the what I have up for you. But actually, I don't want to show you that. All right, let's look. I will show you that later. But let's see. So population growth rate. What I want you to do right now before we look at anything is I want you to get a piece of paper and put Syria, Syria. Leave 2 lines, put Iraq, IRAQ, and put Saudi Arabia just below. We're just going to take some numbers. We're going to make a little chart. Saudi Arabia. All right. Can you see? Oh, you can hardly see this. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to look up the numbers, their population growth rate. We're going to get some information. So PGR. So the population growth rate of Syria, and by the way, I have, instead of just having to look through this whole thing, I know I wanted to concentrate in the Middle East for this one. And I'm going to concentrate on 3 countries that are right next to each other. So Syria has a population growth rate, a PGR of 4.25. And then we look at Iraq. Iraq has a population growth rate of 2.16. And then we go down to Saudi Arabia, 1.6%. So our population growth rate compares the average annual percent of change in population. So all of these have a positive population growth rate, but this is going to have the faster population growth. This is going to show us that it has kind of a normal population growth, and then this is showing us down here that it's going to have a slower population growth. But let's keep going and looking. I want you to also look at, for each of these countries, total fertility rate. Remember, we just learned about it. The total fertility rate is the number of children that would be born per woman. All right. If all women lived to the end of their childbearing years. So I know, again, I just want to focus on those 3 countries, Syria, Iraq, and Middle East, Syria, Iraq, and Saudi Arabia. So if right now you want to take the time and find the total fertility rate for Syria, Iraq, and Saudi Arabia, it's up here. All right. So the number of babies per woman in Syria is going to be almost 3 at 2.9. For Iraq, it's going to be above 3, 3.3 babies per woman. And for Saudi Arabia, they're going to be 1.9. And I just wanted to show you those 3 countries compared with all of the world. In Niger, 7 babies per woman. So we have here, if we look through African countries, they're usually going to be, as many of you made the statement in the developed information, that you noticed that a lot of the developing countries had that slower, the lower life expectancy on that do now. You'll see that a lot of them have very high total fertility rates. But we're back to the Middle East. So we're going back now to look at what I wanted to do was I wanted to go, and I'll show you how I got here first. All right. I wanted to go into Syria. Of course, where's Syria? Middle East. Oh, well, anyhow, I wanted to go into Syria, which I did. And I went into, so here on the map, I wanted to show you, here's Syria, then Iraq, then Saudi Arabia. So we're comparing 3 countries that are very close to each other. And we go into people and society, and I wanted to show you the age structure. So here, we're going to look at those numbers later, but here's their age structure. You can see how that population growth rate being 4.25, you can see how every one of these stacks is out a little bit further. For some reason, it looks like they had child loss. Remember, we've had a lot of war in Syria, so perhaps there was a huge, some sort of genocide or something, or some killing, and that's why those bars go slow. So again, 0 to 4, these are the age groups. So if we go up in here, the age group that would start fighting and would be in that kind of war zone, 25 to 29, you can see that it starts going down. But you can see this is what I'm pointing to, that last bar pops out further, right? So that's that 4.2 population growth rate. When we go over to Iraq, still it has that fast population growth size and a shape until we get to this bar. Here, the 2.16% population growth rate was taken in 2020. You can see that the 0 to 4 and the 5 to 9, they've had a reduction in babies born. We'd have to go and look at the social trends and what's going on, why that has happened. And then Saudi Arabia, let's look at its. Isn't this an interesting age structure diagram? What happened here? Why? I've never seen an age structure diagram that has so many waves. But what this is showing you, what we're just going to focus on first before we go and look further into this, is Syria has a population growth rate of 1.6. That is close to a 0 population growth. It's a very slow growth rate, almost, not negative exactly, but what is happening here that they're having so few less babies? And then also, if you go and you look under those numbers, so sex ratio is supposed to be 50-50. If we look, well, there's usually 1.05 males born to every female. So there is a higher percentage of men born, but look at these numbers. And then the men, 2.7 million, 2.5 million. And then we have here 10 million and only 6 million female in this age structure. And then as we go here, we have 1.2 million and only 778,000 females. What's going on in Saudi Arabia that they have such a skewed sex ratio? Only when they get to that older area does it become more balanced and equal. So when we look at their population, their population age diagram, it is one of the most interesting ones I've ever seen. Something to further investigate. Let's see. So now we've done that. This is what I wanted to show you, what you're going to do now. So here's your assignment for today. All right. So again, we wanted to understand more about developing versus developed nations. It's one of the things that will get us to slow population growth. So you're going to go back into that CIA World Factbook, country comparison. You're going to go to people and society, and you're going to get the population growth rate. And you're going to tell me, based on that growth rate, if you think it's developed or developing. And we gave you that number in the lecture. Here's some just age structure diagram question. Which of these has the positive population growth rate? Which has the negative growth rate? Please make sure that your font is a little bit different so I can just see your answers. And then here is, we're going to look at that. Now we're getting out of people and society and we're looking at economy, the economics of a country, because that has a lot to do with if you're developed or developing. So what I explained at the beginning of the lecture was that GDP, purchasing power parity, and this is all of the money that a nation makes. Then we have to break it down and say per capita, you're going to look at per capita PPP. And this is how much money each country makes. I was very interested in, I think it was Liechtenstein and Monaco for these numbers. For example, right, so we did that. So first things first, before you go and you start looking up this information, I want you to predict if the country is developed or developing. I want you to look at them, and just based on your knowledge about Argentina, Australia, Brazil, Canada, China, Germany, Nigeria, and United States, I want you to put in here if they're developed or developing. All right. If you think that they're more than developing, you could say that they're an emerging economy. So how it kind of goes is it goes a developing nation is the lowest. Emerging economy would be just out of that developing nation status, getting to developed, and then highly developed. So there's 4 stages. We've only talking about 2, but if you really wanted to break them down and you wanted to say, I think that it's a developing nation, emerging economy, developed, or highly developed, you could also predict that on a more kind of what do you call this, minutia scale. I don't know. So next thing you're going to do, you're going to go back into CIA World Book, and you're going to look up the in economy now, the GDP purchasing power. So when we go there and we go to country comparisons, World Factbook, about guide to country comparisons. That's how we get back to this. Instead of going into people and society, you're going to go into economy now. Right? And here's your first GDP. And here is your GDP per capita. Those are the 2 things that you're going to be looking up about those nations that's new. Then, because life expectancy and infant mortality rate are predictors if a country is developed or developing, and here's some of the information here to help you determine at the end if life expectancy is over 70 years old, you're into that developed nation status, 80 plus, higher developed, and the infant mortality. After you fill in all this information, I want you to tell me what you think. Based on your data, don't go anywhere else. Based on your data, you now tell me if it's developed or developing. I am going to give you the answers. All right. Then down here, after the data, explain why you made your predictions here. Explain to me, why did you think Brazil was developed or developing based on what you know? And then second, were your predictions correct? Why or why not? I'm going to add 1/3 one in here. Were you surprised by any? Because maybe sometimes we have these preconceived notions about what a country is, and based on what we know about them, and then when we look into the data, we look into the facts, we find out the real truth. And it's a mind growing experience. It's gaining knowledge and understanding and things like that. So all right, so CIA World Factbook is your assignment for today, and email me with any questions.